Let me start with the first trend, and that's the rise of video telematics. So the way I look at it, and we look at this, is that we really see a revolution in terms of the richness of functionality, the richness of intelligence that is offered through these new category of technology. So previously, telematics for more than 20 years or 25 years was based on just location data, location tracking, and so very basic information. Now with adding imaging, with adding video, we can tap into a lot more intelligence. And, from dash cams to driver monitoring, surround view, or even ADAS, all of these new solutions allow companies to increase the safety of their operations and also use the video evidence for claims management, and in that way save costs as well, of course. They can qualify for insurance discounts. They can save fuel through driver monitoring, improved driver behavior. So all of this is very heavily based on video type solutions. And, I mentioned some of the examples. There's also scope for recording video for use after the journey, of course. It's also being applied now more recently to cargo monitoring. So video-enabled cargo monitoring. You see an example from Skybits, one of the leaders in trailer tracking. They call it SkyCam. So again, by having video pointed inside the trailer or truck, you can immediately see what's happening, whether there has been theft or everything is okay or not. So again, a good example of how video enhances the intelligence and the type of information there. You could even look at more use cases, inspection, preventive maintenance, identifying trucks being hijacked, etc., etc. So video is really a very powerful addition to what we see in telematics. So if you look at the technology, we see increasingly a wide range of suppliers offering off-the-shelf integrated solutions. They have the sensors, the processor, the connectivity, and even the storage, all built into the same form factor, which can be easily then installed out of the box, which is something a lot of the fleet managers are looking for. We see a lot of combinations appearing, for example, dashcam plus driver monitoring, so both outward-facing and inward-facing cameras. And of course, I didn't mention it yet, all of this is increasingly based on artificial intelligence, so using AI and deep learning to recognize situations, to recognize events, and then only upload relevant events instead of previously either storing or uploading the entire video stream, which is both expensive and actually not very useful to do anyway. We continue to see this growing. There's already a good amount of momentum. There's a lot of regulation starting to happen in certain countries and forcing fleets to adopt some of these solutions. I'm aware of, for example, ADAS for commercial vehicles in Israel, but there's many other initiatives from governments to kind of promote and sometimes make compulsory the installation of these kind of solutions. So that's the first trend, and it's definitely one we expect to see to grow quite significantly next year, 2021. So the second trend, 5G, and it's a little bit linked to video in the way that it will offer better and higher bandwidth, which is of course what you need if you have to upload and share video streams to the back office or to other parties as well. There's a lot of talk about 5G. I think for commercial telematics in 2021, the number of applications will be limited. And by the way, on the chart there, you see the mix of connectivity, cellular connectivity technologies moving forward. As you can see, 4G will be the dominant connectivity technology across that time horizon here, with 5G starting to appear towards the end of the forecast period. However, there are solutions in the market already today. For example, the 5G vehicle router from Sierra Wireless you see there, which has 5G, fallback to LTE, high bandwidth gigabit Wi-Fi for vehicle area networking, connecting body cams, or uploading video streams. So these routers we expect to be used in specialist use cases, public safety, law enforcement, buses in transit, both for surveillance and Wi-Fi coverage inside buses, but also for ambulances, like first time triage for paramedics, for example, or fire engines, indeed. You see some of the examples there on the picture below. So these are the use cases we expect to see appear in 21 going forward. So, but certainly the discussion and the activity around 5G will certainly increase a lot next year. So the third technology I want to zoom in on is cold chain asset tracking. And this has been around for a long time for transportation of food and other types of produce. But now I think there's a very much more important use case as we speak appearing, and that's the distribution of a number of COVID-19 vaccines, many of which need to be transported end to end at very low temperatures, as low as minus 70 degrees in some cases. So this is now resulting in a huge effort to, get everything together from the manufacturing plant and the transportation to airports, the warehouses at airports, then the transportation between the warehouse and the aircraft themselves, using specialized containers, dry ice storage, and of course then also distribution to the hospitals at the other end of the distribution chain. So this is a huge challenge, and it's one where telematics and cold chain in particular will play a big role, not just for making sure the temperature stays within the requirements, but also making sure nothing happens during the transportation in terms of theft or loss of cargo, or indeed maybe terrorist attacks. So telematics will make sure that these very critical type of transportation is taking place, starting already this year, but certainly increasing next year quite dramatically. As we all know, this is the only and the real solution for addressing COVID-19. So telematics will have a very important role here. So moving to the next technology, and that's about automation, various levels of autonomous commercial vehicles. We see some of the big players here, Waymo, part of Google's parent Alphabet. I'll show another example of the things they do there. We see Amazon, they acquired Zoox, one of the driverless vehicle startups, which I think yesterday announced their first purpose-built robotaxi. We do expect they will also move into driverless delivery vehicles, but certainly Amazon is fully understanding the importance of automation. Daimler has been very active in terms of truck automation, level 4 testing, and expected commercialization in a couple of years. TuSimple is another important player active in US and China. And again here, telematics will play an important role. It will play an important role for remote monitoring and control, because in some cases there won't be any human operator locally available, so everything has to happen remotely, but also being used for things like preventive maintenance, making sure that these very complicated and sophisticated assets keep performing and functioning without any hiccups. So I want to talk about 3 specific application areas for autonomous vehicles, because of course some of these examples you see on this slide will take quite a few years. to fully materialize. But there's a couple of examples where we can see this actually happening sooner and maybe already starting next year in 2021. So one example, and this is actually another announcement from, it's a partnership between Michigan and CAVNU in building or planning a corridor between Detroit and Ann Arbor. It will be a corridor in this case of transit buses, so public transport, but we see similar initiatives for freight corridors, which could actually link up transportation hubs, warehouse hubs within a certain country. So not driverless trucks driving everywhere, but being controlled and managed on a specific dedicated lane. So that's what we expect, at least, how commercial vehicle automation will materialize in the future. A second important use case is delivery. And of course, as we all know, COVID-19 has resulted in a huge increase in the share of e-commerce. Although the total amount of business decreased in 2020, the share of e-commerce was actually increasing quite dramatically, especially during the lockdown periods. But as you see, going forward, it will become more and more important, reaching more than 30% of all commerce will be e-commerce by 2025. That's a big challenge in terms of last mile delivery. And we've seen an incredible amount of activity in exploring new form factors to accomplish that, difficult and expensive problem of last mile delivery. You see some of the players there, various form factors from vans and shuttles to robots and pods, all the way to unmanned aerial vehicles and drones. For example, Yihang in China working with DHL on trials. A lot of this is taking place in the US. Neuro, for example, is another one, but delivery companies like FedEx and others are also investing in this technology. So why do we need these new form factors? Well, to cope with increasing demand and unpredictable demand, I think the traditional way of doing that last mile delivery didn't really work well, and we noticed that very clearly during COVID-19. Customer expectations are becoming more demanding in terms of same day or even same hour delivery. And as a result, we've seen some governments, for example, US government, making exemptions to start allowing companies using these new autonomous form factors in certain cases. So these will allow more flexibility, higher capacity, but it will also allow to do last mile delivery at a much lower cost and a much lower price point, which is ultimately what this is supposed to be. And finally, all of these are electric form factors, so they will certainly contribute to having a lower impact on the environment, especially as these are obviously operating mainly in dense urban areas. So very, very important trend, and we expect this to continue unabated in 2021. And then a final use case of autonomous commercial vehicles is at airports, and I would even say at any other private terrain venue where the use of driverless trucks is not depending on regulation or legislation, but can be already deployed today. You see examples here both for transit, deployed in a number of airports by Navia, but also transport of freight between the baggage handling areas at airports and the aircraft themselves. So in this case, a smart electric autonomous package tractor is being trialed in France as well. So certainly those kind of applications we start seeing increasing in 2021. So another, and I already referred to this, is electrification. There's been also a lot of effort in electrifying trucks, not just electrifying passenger cars. You see a couple examples here on the slide. Volvo, Peterbilt, Volta, but also, Mercedes-Benz, an interesting announcement from Amazon ordering 1,800 electric vans in Europe. Again, role of telematics will be very important here. for EV range monitoring, charging management, guiding towards recharging areas, etc., etc. So again, something that can only happen through advanced telematics. So my final slide here, before we look at the Q&A here, is about the wider supply chain integration and digitization. It's a more invisible trend, but nevertheless a very important one, because everything that is happening is increasingly connected. Manufacturers and transporters and customers, retail and business customers need to be connected. They need to share data. They need to engage with each other on marketplaces. And all of this is needed to reach and achieve more flexibility and more scalability, which, as we have seen during COVID-19, wasn't always the case. So there's a big challenge for the wider supply chain, of which, of course, the fleet telematics business is a part of, to use more intelligence, more communication between the different parts of the value chain and across the various software systems, warehouse management solutions, transportation management, enterprise resource planning. These need to be better integrated and better connected, and the information better shared across all participants in these value chains. Demand forecasting in particular, as we have seen with COVID-19, it was very disruptive, very unexpected and sudden changes in demand, in particular for e-commerce. And clearly, the industry needs to use different ways of anticipating, predicting these kind of fluctuations. And it could be something else than COVID-19. It could be the impact of Brexit or any other geopolitical disturbance. And in the end, as you can see from that little chart there, using AI to be better informed about, what's happening in terms of supply chain variations.